Well, Mr. Henson, we've recently seen you on national TV sharing a tidbit of your cancer experience and specifically your divine healing from terminal cancer. And we wanted to get a little bit more background from you, and we're really interested in hearing more of the story.
Well, in order to tell the full story, I really need to tell you about my childhood. I came from a Christian family, but my mother was profoundly Christian. My father was a Christian, although his life did not really convey that message. Well, anyway, as a child, he treated me like I was unwelcome, or at least that was my interpretation of the way I was treated. To illustrate it further, he never put his arm around me. He never patted me on the back. He never played any games with me. He never did anything with me, and it really, my interpretation of his behavior was that I was not welcome in this household. And so it was, from my standpoint, it was a tense, difficult way to be brought up in the world. And so when you talk about God the Father, you know, my image of fatherhood was not very positive. So anyhow, all of this put together, I suppose you could say that my foundation in life, that is my childhood memories and experiences, were not very positive at all. Mm-hmm. And so this led into the experience that I was telling about.
So you just felt unloved and unwanted from your father. What about your mom?
No, I felt she was very kind and loving, and she was the epitome of a Christian person. But there was a dichotomy. You know, she acted one way, he acted completely different. Now, I want to be sure to emphasize that he never mistreated me in terms of beating me or anything like that. I did get spanked, but I deserved the spankings.
Right.
I was not treated cruelly, other than the fact I just didn't have any feeling of love from him.
So that's your background growing up. Did you believe in God at the time? Or?
No, I didn't. I didn't see, I couldn't understand that there was a God, and, you know, why would he put me in this family with this kind of a father, and so on and so forth. So it didn't seem to me that there was a God, and if there was one, it didn't seem that he had control over his own creation.
So, fast forwarding, you know, through the years of your life, not believing in God and still having this nagging feeling of your dad not loving you. I assume you just went on with your life, and one day you found yourself sick, I guess.
Yes. I suppose you could say that my life from, let's say, age 12 to 40 was characterized by a complete self-centeredness. I don't think I thought much or did much with regard to the needs of others. I was very busily engaged in pursuing my own point of view in my own ways, and so forth and so on. And yes, at some point in time, I think it's interesting to note that I read a magazine one Sunday afternoon, and it talked about how terrible hairy cell leukemia was, and the fact that there was no cure and you were certain to die and all that sort of thing. Well, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, I thought about that and thought, I really do deserve something like that because I have lived a selfish, self-centered life, and I am guilty of doing this, and, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened to me. Well, that was a very bad decision because within 1 year, actually probably 11 months, I was diagnosed with hairy cell leukemia.
Oh, my goodness.
And I didn't know exactly how it worked, but I remembered instantly. As soon as the guy told me, I felt like I had given it to myself.
Oh.
So my first thought was, well, if I gave it to myself, or I got myself into this situation, I'll get myself out. Well, that didn't turn out to be true at all, but that's what I thought at that point in time.
Oh, really? So you just set about trying to figure a way to beat it?
Well, I had spent my whole life thinking there was no God, and it was completely up to me to find my way through life. And so I always went about it in a deep study way. In other words, I just gathered information, thought about it, analyzed it, summarized it, and came out with something that previously seemed to work, but this time it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so I was in the position of having used my only tool, gathering information and analyzing it, and it didn't work. It didn't come close to working. Nothing about it worked. And so I didn't even believe there was a spiritual world, or I had serious doubts about whether or not there was a spiritual world or a God or anything else. But in keeping with my tradition, I started reading books.
Right.
And I don't know how many books I read, but let's say 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And one of the books that really made an impression on me was about the Aboriginals in Australia. And the sum and essence of the message that I took away is the book said that they were guided. For example, if they're out in the desert and they don't have any water or whatever, then they are guided, and their understanding of God was two brothers in heaven. They were guided by these two brothers to go and put their water pitchers or whatever in certain places, and shortly thereafter it would rain and fill their pitchers. That just seemed absolutely incredible to me. And then another part of their story was that if they needed meat, they would be guided to a particular place, and even say, okay, a wild boar is going to come past that bush in 2 minutes. Well, by golly, it did. And they would shoot the boar and eat the meat. And, so these kinds of things were just staggering to my imagination. I just couldn't believe how this could happen. And the fact that their God was two brothers in heaven just made no sense at all to me.
Right, but did it open your mind?
Yeah, but it kind of said there are things beyond my mind, beyond my understanding that actually happened in the world, and therefore I don't know it all. Maybe there's something for me to learn. Another idea that came through reading these books was that someone said there's a crack in the cosmic egg. And, in other words, the cosmos or whatever, there's a crack in it. And I thought, what does that mean? Well, at that time, I lived beside a lake, and we had a back porch, and, there were big cement slab and little bushes around it. Well, I had been feeding ducks, wild ducks, throwing corn and things like that out there. And they would come up and peck on the window, saying, hey, we need some more corn. Well, anyway, for whatever reason, they laid their eggs in these little bushes right beside the patio. So I could see the egg, and, there were several of them. Well, anyway, I had observed these eggs for quite a while, and then one day, one of the eggs began to shake, kind of move back and forth, and, he started pecking, and first thing you know, the egg cracked, then it split open, and then a little duckling popped out, and some of the other eggs also hatched in that way, and these little ducklings followed their mother down to the water and swam off, into the distance. And it occurred to me that now, that little duckling in the egg, all he knew anything about was the inside of that egg. And at some point in time, it cracked open, and he already knew how to swim. He already knew to follow his mother. And so, how in the heck did that information get in his head?
Right.
Well, I thought, once again, there are a lot of things that I don't know much about, and I have no clue how that works.
So
it does.
That was kind of the theme of you reading all these books. You started more and more.
Yeah.
Learning
more and more about things that happened in the world that I didn't know anything about, didn't understand, and what have you. Mm-hmm. So I could at least agree with myself there were things that were amazing that I couldn't understand or define,
So all along, you're dealing with this cancer experience, I assume getting sicker and, sicker and leading up to a point where what happened that really told you that there was somebody, higher, I guess?
One of my friends said, well, look, you ought to go to a psychologist. I've forgotten what his name was. But anyway, you ought to go to this psychologist. And I said, for what? I'm not crazy. I'm sick. And he said, well, this guy has, had years of experience in dealing with people in your situation. And so you can think of him as a consultant. He will take his vast background of discussions with people who have similar problems, and he will make some suggestions and guide you in ways that you wouldn't guide yourself. That undoubtedly it would be helpful.
Wow.
And I thought, well,
that makes sense, huh?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'll give it a try. And so I made an appointment with this man and went over and sat down and, went through the preliminaries. And then when I got to the portion of the discussion where he asked me about my childhood, I told him about my father and our very negative situation, and he became very concerned. Okay. And he said, oh my goodness. He said, well, I want you to go home and do an empty chair procedure. Well, I didn't know what he was talking about, never heard of it, didn't know anything about it. He said, well, it's very simple. You put two chairs facing each other, you sit in one chair, and you imagine that your father is sitting in the other chair. Then you ask him all the questions that you would have asked him when you were 5 or 6 years old, mm-hmm. and all the things that you want to complain about, just complain about them. And so when you've said everything that you can think of that you want to say to your father, then you get up and sit in his chair and answer all the questions. And I thought, good gosh, this guy's crazier than I am. But he was highly reputed, and I'd paid him $75, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste $75, so I'll just go home and do it. But
now, at this time, your dad has already passed away?
No, he's still alive.
Okay.
But, I see him very rarely.
Okay.
So anyway, as I am driving home, I think, well, I'll give this a try. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want anybody to know because they would certainly think I was crazy.
Yeah.
So I waited until my wife went shopping. So she was out of the house. Mm-hmm. I closed the curtains in the basement. And so I was there alone except for two little dogs.
Right.
And anyway, I put the chairs where I was supposed to put them. And, then I said all the things to my father, like, why did you bring me into this world if you didn't want me? Mm-hmm. What have I done wrong? Why are you mad at me? I didn't come with the intent to harm anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't really know how I got here, but I'm here, and it's my intent just to be a good person. Mm-hmm. And yet I'm treated like in a very negative way. Mm-hmm. So why is all of this happening? And anyway, I finally finished all the questions.
Were you mad while you were saying that? Were you kind of yelling at him or saying?
No, I don't think so. I think I was just speaking to him in a normal voice, but in a way that was very interested and concerned. Uh-huh. So I wasn't yelling at him, but I was just intensely interested in what's the deal
seeking
here.
Answers from him.
Yeah. Now, remember, I'm imagining this.
Yeah, right.
He's not there.
Yeah.
So anyway, eventually I get through with all this, and I think, well, there is no way in the world that I can answer the questions for him. Just can't be done. Mm-hmm. But I'll sit down in his chair and see what happens.
That's what you were supposed to do?
Yeah.
Is that what the guy told you?
That was exactly what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
So I sat down in his chair, and instantly I knew that my father had always loved me. There'd never been a day of my life, and that I had misunderstood the love of my father, and the problem was me. And I mean, that was just absolutely shocking, Well, his behavior, the way he understood fatherhood and what to do and so on, apparently would be characterized by he worked hard, provided food, clothing, and shelter, and he turned the motherly duties or the other aspects of raising children over to my mother. Mm-hmm. And his focus was on making a living, and it was hard for him for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And so I later found out that's the way he was raised. So his only model of being a father was his father, mm-hmm. and his father pretty much operated in the same way. Mm-hmm. So what would one expect? I mean, that's the only model that he knew anything about, mm-hmm. and that was the model that he followed. So anyway, as I realized I had wasted my entire life's relationship with my father, I began to cry. Oh, I began to sob. Mm-hmm. It was the most painful, I guess you'd say, emotional experience of my life. Mm-hmm. I lay down on the floor and just sobbed for, I really don't know how long. But anyway, it was quite a while.
Wow. Well, and so you went through that experience and that was it?
Well, no, that wasn't it by a long shot. I soon got on a bed and continued to cry and sob and what have you. Mm-hmm. And then I began to say to myself, why did it have to be this way? Mm. Why did it have to be this way? Mm-hmm. And in a manner of speaking, I was giving God a negative backhand.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because, I was kind of saying, not my fault now, mm-hmm. why did you put me in this circumstance and allow all this to happen? Oh. So why did it have to be this way? And that's when Jesus intervened. And I didn't see him. I don't really know how I knew it was him, other than the fact that he's the one I had been praying to.
Okay.
And so, in any case, this is what he said to me. First of all, it did not have to be this way. This is the path that you have chosen. And the tears you're shedding now are the tears I shed for you while you were on the wrong path. Well, this just blew up my entire worldview, you might say.
Right.
To all of a sudden find out that there was a God, that He knew about me, He knew about my circumstances, and when I cried out for help, He showed up.
Yeah.
And I thought, good gosh almighty, I mean, what in the heck is this all about?
Right.
And then I realized that I'd been wrong all along, not only about my earthly father, but about my heavenly Father. And so, my logic, the logic in my mind was just shattered completely of just all little pieces of clay, you might say. Well, then the other things that let me say what I was thinking about is that I agreed and I remembered that yes, as a young child, I had rejected God, rejected church, rejected the Bible, and yes, I had chosen this path. And now I was beginning to see the fruit of the path that I was on. But Jesus then said, after He pointed out that it didn't have to be this way, this is the path I chose, He then said, I have heard your prayers for health, and they will be answered in due course. Well, right away, I knew He was the highest authority in heaven. He didn't have to go get anybody's approval, that He and the Father were one. And so whatever He said, they said, and there was no higher authority, and so I was healed. Now, how I came to all of that, I'm not sure, but I was just certain that I was healed. Now, I was healed because God said so.
Right.
Well, I also knew that, it would be a while before my body got the message. I'm
But
not
just
sure.
because of the way that it was delivered, and it's almost like He gave you the faith instantly too, to just believe, and you just knew without a doubt.
Yeah, I don't know how all this worked.
Yeah.
I can't really tell you that, but this is what actually happened. And so it was a very powerful, life-changing experience.
Right.
And so, the next time I went to the doctor, he did the blood tests and all the things that he normally did, and he said, Mr. Henson, have you had a transfusion? And I said, well, I thought you were in charge of that. He said, well, you could have gone to another doctor and gotten a transfusion, and I wouldn't know anything about it. And I said, well, no, I haven't had a transfusion. He said, well, you go back and do your blood tests again. Go give them some more blood. And so, we went through that, and he came back and looked at it, and my goodness, that's amazing. So every time I went to him, like every week or so thereafter, he would pretty much go through the same gyration and, what have you been doing?
Really?
Anyway, finally he called me one day and he said, well, Mr. Henson, we just got your blood test back, and I am just shocked. Your blood is better than mine, and I want to know what you've been doing. And so I said, okay, well, I'll tell you. So the next time I went to see him, he just wanted to know what I'd been doing.
Okay.
And so I told him about my prayer journey and experience with Jesus, and he just, just obvious that it was just overwhelming to him. And he said, well, Mr. Henson, I'm a scientist. I don't know anything about that. And he later told me that he really didn't believe it, but he didn't want to, shake my faith.
Right.
I said, well, nothing will shake my faith.
Yeah.
I know what happened. I don't know all the whys and wherefores and explanations, but I know that what I told you was real. And so he said, well, yeah, now I believe it, but I didn't at first. And so that kind of took care of that. Now, as a result of my personal experience with Jesus, for some reason, I started traveling the world, giving my testimony in China and Taiwan and Far East and in Africa, many different countries in Africa, many different countries in Central Europe, in the Caribbean, across the United States. So I have told this story many, many times. And apparently, for some reason, the Holy Spirit speaks through this story, and people are often healed. I don't know why. I don't understand it. It's not something I'm doing, but it's just a story that came into my life experience that I didn't create, didn't deserve, don't fully understand. But anyway, there's a lot more to it, but I think that that's enough for today. Thank you for paying attention.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome.